Hi, I'd like to welcome you to the third in the series of thought leadership conversations that NovusNorth is hosting. My name is Dave Cowing, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer here at NovusNorth. NovusNorth is an expert-led provider of product design, development, and delivery services for the fintech and financial services industry. At NovusNorth, we believe that great digital experiences drive greater business outcomes. Today, we'll be speaking with Paul Eisen. Paul is an award-winning user experience expert whose career spans 30 years defining and designing human-centered business solutions. Today, he's going to share with us some of his thoughts on how companies can be more effective in creating great user experiences. Hey, Paul, welcome to the program and thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks, Dave. It's a great pleasure to be speaking with you here today about a topic for which I have so much passion.
Do you want to take a minute and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I've had the privilege of working with leading organizations across many industries, including financial services and healthcare, travel, consumer packaged goods, and manufacturing. And in these varied industries, I've defined and executed human-centered strategies and research, designed technology-enabled business solutions that touch customers, employees, vendors, and suppliers. And an area of particular interest and focus for me is the experience practice development. That is, I've helped organizations large and small put the pieces in place to be able to create great experiences for their customers, employees, and business partners. I also enjoy teaching at the University of Toronto, trying to inspire a whole new generation of prospective user experience specialists.
Thank you for joining us today, Paul. Let's dive right in. To ground our conversation, what do we mean by customer experience and user experience?
So Dave, the customer experience is the sum total of all interactions that a customer has with a company across multiple touch points involving sales, service, and support. While user experience typically refers to the technology components. Now, the bottom line is this. No matter how you may want to position your company's brand image through your marketing and sales efforts, the experience that you create is your brand.
Thanks, Paul. So why should companies care about creating great digital experiences?
So Dave, I mentioned that the experience that you create is your brand. So let's connect brand to business results. This notion of brand equity is real. A study by Forbes has shown that for every dollar invested in improving the customer experience, businesses generate around $3 in return and an 11% increase in revenue. And we also know that companies that invest in design and experience, leaders in the experience space, have greater increases in their valuations than laggards, those who do not invest in design and experience sufficiently. This leadership and this increased share price comes through their core operating financials, things like lower cost per customer acquisition, higher customer loyalty, higher employee loyalty, lower customer churn, share of wallet. And then there's the expenses side where there's decreases in development and operating expenses.
Thanks, Paul. There clearly are some compelling hard dollar benefits to delivering a customer experience. Do you have any examples you can share with us?
Sure, that's a great idea. Why don't we touch on a couple of real world examples? So one of them is a well-known case study where a global technology company with thousands of employees applied human-centered methods to redesign a piece of internal employee-facing software. The results were a productivity benefit of $6.8 million, which represents 100 times, just in the first year, their direct investment in the user experience methods. Now, with a large workforce, you can see how the multipliers can be staggering. I'll give you another example from my personal experience. A team that I was part of redesigned an e-commerce website in the consumer electronics space using human-centered methods. Now, we focused on the path to purchase from the homepage through to the product listing and the details pages. And importantly, we started with experience research to understand the information that customers value most in the shopping experience for this particular type of consumer electronics. We then applied best practices in design to render the experience. We restructured both the product listing and the details pages The result was an immediate and sustained lift in sales of over 50% through the online channel.
That's super interesting, Paul, and 50% lift is clearly compelling. I love hearing about how companies are achieving business results through the use of human-centric methods. Given all this potential value, where should companies start?
So Dave, to do this right, an organization needs to evolve to become truly human-centered. This means that when you create solutions, you need to apply the right methods to discover what end users truly value, and then how to deliver that value, and only that value. In fact, it's estimated that billions of dollars are wasted every year globally in creating features and functions that are not valued by users, and so they're simply not used. Now, you can and you should start small. So pick one or two particularly important and high-profile initiatives. For startups, this may represent your core or your only offering. While for larger companies, this might be a project or a platform that is particularly important to your business growth. Then you need to find the right people inside your company and augment the team as needed with experienced researchers and designers. You execute the methodology faithfully and showcase your results.
You know, I love the idea of starting small, but altogether, this sounds like a lot of change. I've got to believe there's cultural change, operating changes, a mindset shift. How can companies go about doing this?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head, Dave. This is about organizational change. And specifically in the domain of experience, there are 5 capability areas, or as I refer to them as pillars, that you need to focus on. The first is standards. Now, these are best practices in interaction and service design that you adopt for your organization. Now, for interaction design, there are great pattern libraries out there, such as Google's Material Design, that you can use as a start. Alongside this is a human-centered methodology that needs to be codified and integrated into your lifecycle methodologies. Nobody needs a new methodology, but effective integration into your existing methodologies is possible and recommended. Now, this is based on the philosophy of design thinking and lean UX, for example, which is a way to integrate experience practices with agile practices. So there's standards and methodology, and then of course you need to build the skills and capabilities within the organization in order to continue to develop these and execute against them. We're talking about people skilled in ethnographic research, experience strategy, and experience design. Now, across this, to ensure that you're moving in the right direction, you need to install a methodology framework, and this will allow you to track the success at least of initiatives and of the overall program. Now, to round out this framework, we've got standards, methodology, skills, measurement, and finally, you need to overlay this with a governance model that's going to work effectively in your culture.
It sounds like a fantastic framework, Paul, to help companies think about creating capabilities. One of the things that we've seen is this notion of stages in developing UX maturity. If I go back to one of your earlier points, you said you recommend that folks start small. With that in mind, how should they start with your framework? And how long should they expect it to take to get to full maturity?
So Dave, you need to walk before you run. In fact, just like other large cultural transformations such as agile, you need to evolve this at a pace that your organization can absorb. Now, to do this, you look at those 5 pillars we just talked about, and they each have to grow in a balanced way. So for an organization that is highly committed, earlier stage of formation, and therefore more nimble, you're looking at still about 1.5 to 2 years to be able to reach a target level of maturity. While larger, more established organizations that may have a bit more organizational inertia, we're expecting typically 3 to 5 years to be able to evolve to a full state of maturity.
Terrific. That's super insightful, Paul. I love the framework. I love the notion of starting small and evolving, but I guess there's a lot of complexities in implementing such a program. What do you see as the top 2 to 3 risks to look out for?
I'm glad you asked this question about risks, Dave, because there are a whole bunch of gotchas out there. I'll just mention a few. The first is thinking that you can test your way to a good experience. I used to work with a large financial services organization that executed pretty faithfully rigorously on the traditional software development of requirements, design, development, and user acceptance testing. And towards the end of that cycle, they would reach out to the experienced team and say, we understand when we need to run this through usability, which would conjure up this image of a car wash, and out would the solution come squeaky clean and full of great experiences at the other end. So just like any mature quality-oriented methodology, you can't build in quality or experience as an afterthought. Now, related to this is another flaw that you often see, which is skipping discovery research. So the solution approach and the capabilities you want to build need to be grounded in the human insights that you've gathered from discovery research. If you skip this step, you risk creating a superficially good user interface for a product or solution that really doesn't provide value to the end user. The last item I'll mention is something a bit more technical to design, and it's really about focusing on the screen. And even when you understand that even when you do a good job understanding what users value, you may end up focusing on incremental functionality being delivered in conjunction with your incremental releases in an agile mode. Now, if you do this without first focusing on establishing a robust experience architecture, that is a framework that can grow gracefully over time, then you won't have the cohesiveness and you won't have the stability that you need in this platform. So this is something that should be looked at in a sprint zero type of timeline, alongside the engineering team who's focusing on the solution architecture at the same time.
Those are fantastic, Paul. They definitely ring true for me and what I've seen in practice. So I appreciate your views on the risks and the tips that you've shared. Well, that brings our time to a close. Paul, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today and share your insights.
Well, thank you, Dave. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you today.